Yesterday's recording, the video about the tent pole being used as a digging device. If you note the time mark between 40 and 45 seconds, you will hear two steps in the bushes behind me. Right around the time I shake a little bit, because I'm turning to look, I think that's around 47, uh, you'll hear what sounds like somebody parting the bushes. So, I am doing this live tonight because I want people to understand if they are researchers and they are in the field and they hear something sneaking up on them that sounds like a cougar, it potentially may not be. So let me describe my way in. It was approximately 2 to 230 feet to get back into that location. In the last 30 feet, I was followed by something that I thought originally was a muskrat because it was a very small sound. Except I noticed that it was pacing me. It walked parallel to my position. Uh, that I took note of. So as I was sitting there, I made two short recordings. The first one I got a little nervous because the thing was moving around a lot. The second one is the one I posted. So I'm very familiar with the way that Gugwe moved because I had to lure the one away from Jen Jen on the ranch in order for her to eat and drink. Their behavior is very different. They do not go away from water. They will stay in a creek bed, they will stay in a lake edge, like that one, and they won't go seek water elsewhere. They do not use a sponge of any kind to drink with. They don't seem to have the intellect for it. They still use a form of kana, and they can still speak, which, if they are a Neanderthal, we already understand that. But their behavior is very different, especially when they approach you. And the reason is they have typically cataracts because of the high content of crayfish in their diet. Gives them keratin poisoning and gives them severe cataracts. So they're a little bit blind. So you got about 30-40 seconds to get out of an area if they're sneaking up on you because they have to locate you, look at you, and sometimes they have to be at very close distance in order for that to occur. The one on the ranch habitually stayed in the creek bed. He wouldn't move out of it, no matter what I did to him. I threw stuff at him. I taunted him. I threw sticks at him. I threw rocks at him. The only time he would say he had the advantage, so to speak, is he would huff the wind like a coyote. I smell you. So I'd hit ground and change position so he couldn't, smell me anymore. I'd make sure I was not in the right, not in the wrong wind. So these things will stay very close to the ground. The sounds will be at about 2 foot and below level, but they are not as quiet as a cougar. A cougar is very soft-footed when it sneaks up on you, and these things make a little bit more of a rustle, like a kid crawling across a lawn with some leaves on it is a good way of describing what you hear. That kind of knee shuffle, but it's actually their feet and their hands. When they stand up, that's when you have to worry. And that's what I heard at right around 40-second mark, was two steps towards me. So the one on the ranch couldn't see me. I could tell that he had cataracts because I got a close look at him, very close, a couple of times. And they don't like leaving cover. They prefer, even more than other types of species of cryptids, they stay undercover, period, in a sense. They don't reveal themselves. The most you'll ever see is maybe like shoulder up, or you'll see like the body mass as they're coming towards you. They always come at you head down, crawling with their toes and their front, hands. So they kind of like spider crawl across the ground at you. and they have to pause, because of that cataract issue. The younger ones, they don't have cataracts, and they are a little more active and far more dangerous. If you're going to think of anything that is a 411 suspect, these guys are on my list. And this is also the end of the pond where the bear people have already ceased to go. It's past where the old deer blind is. It's recently become active again. That's also the location where that really neatly twisted S-shaped uh, pine maple was. And I said, oh, yeah, yeah, if I want to really follow these things, I'm going to have to crawl through that kind of crap. All the mud and shit. That was another of the locations I got followed in by this thing. So, not only do they sound like a cougar, and they make kind of a coyote huffing sound when they sniff at you, they won't typically make any kind of response to a cough to cease and desist. Coughing typically with the more friendly species will get them to stop their movement and they won't come forward. But Gugwe don't care about that. They don't pay attention to that. They mimic a lot of the friendly Bigfoot sounds and their interaction patterns in order to lure you in. So be very, very careful. And like I said, right before they pounce on you, they will stand up. Before that, you're going to hear nothing but ground movement. They will pace you, they will stop, they will pace you, they will stop. But the weird thing is they're never on their feet. They're always on the ground on all fours until they get ready to nab you. That's when you'll hear the steps towards you. Boony. And I mean it. Because they are incredibly dangerous. Jen Jen couldn't get away from the one that attacked her for months, like 6, 8 months. I had to call a mate for her because it also strangled her, broke her larynx so she couldn't scream anymore for a mate. So I took up screaming for her to make sure, hopefully, something would come and help her. So, the other things to note, you're always going to find their defecation in water. I haven't found that yet, but the other locations, the opposite side of that joining peninsula, because the peninsula I went down today is the one that I gone up like 3, 4 weeks ago, where I found the peculiar clothing and things just not looking right, like somebody maybe got dumped in the lake. So again, I think that area might be incredibly dangerous. But I haven't seen any sign of that creature closer to any kind of main trail or near any homes. That creature seems to stay in the lake, either swimming or crossing it, and always on the peninsulas. I know that the bear people are south and east of that location, and I know there's some sort of conflict between probably the Gugwe and the bear people, which means the bear people have more morals. They don't cannibalize people anyway, from everything I understand about them. And they do use a lot of medicines and tools and whatnot. The other thing that Gugwe don't seem to do is utilize tools. Ye Neanderthal maybe made a lot of tools, but they don't seem to, whatever this is, if it is a Neanderthal, or a subspecies or another variant that we are not aware of, they don't seem to use wooden tools, they don't seem to use stone tools. They utilize their hands for everything, as far as I can tell. That's what confused me about the digging, because I do know that most cryptids will pick up whatever we leave behind and either think it's cool and utilize it or trade it or whatever. Again, they like to mock behaviors. The other thing is it wasn't digging for a rodent, it was digging for a snake. So that's a clue. Difference in like diet behavior. So most cryptids that are friendly will always dig for small creatures like voles, rats, mice. It's always a rodent. When you're getting to the more predatory things, they start going after lizards, snakes, etc. But you cannot always rely on that because Yeren also eat snake and lizard, and they're incredibly friendly. So, by and far, if you have something sneaking up at you, pacing you, having difficulty seeing you, always trying to face you, that's the other thing. Because their vision is so horrible, they have to rely on their ears and their sense of smell. So they will always look where you are at. They won't make a movement that isn't associated with looking. Another way of thinking about it. So, sorry I was a little startled. I haven't heard one of those in a long time. But again, I've been snuck up on that into the lake 3 times now, so it finally clued me back in. Let me think what else I can remember about them, because that one was, like I said, on a ranch for like 6, 8 months. It liked to taunt me. It would verbally say things. Like, it would call my name. It would attempt to whistle, but it would never make a complete whistle. It would more like a failed bird call to get my attention. And they do set traps, and that's something you do have to be concerned about. I haven't seen any traps on that end yet of that particular lake, but the trap that they like to set is a trench trap with usually a yew wood bow or a cedar wood bow in it. And it's usually a good size. It's a thick piece of wood that's bendable, usually relatively green. And they use a thick cord of elm bark. What else? Honeysuckle vine. That's what I remember in the one that I disarmed. They'll typically set the trap 2 to 3 feet down on the ground. It will have a peg to release the string, and they'll mount a spike that is approximately 2 feet long and about 2 inches in diameter. And the top, 6, 8 inches is very, very sharp. And they'll place a bundle of sticks that is tied to the peg. And if you trip over that bundle, it will release the string and shoot that thing right up through your groin. It's intended to cripple you and break your hip bones, which is what happened to my father's mother in the Okanagan when she got caught in a trap like that. And the trap is called a jaunty trap, according to Oma, the Oma woman who was on a ranch, Jen Jen. So the things that the Guanche told me about the Gugwe, they are a very cannibalistic species. They cannibalize each other. They cannibalize us. And they don't do much else. They eat crawdad, they eat a few roots. You're not going to find a lot of ground evidence around them other than like their dung in the water, which I haven't found yet, but that doesn't mean anything. And sorry, my allergies have gone crazy on me. My new chemicals at work are just killing me. So they rely heavily on you making mistakes, so don't make any. Uh, and their living situation is more or less like a booger. They'll take up residency underneath a fallen log or a hollowed out log. They don't like the rain, but they don't seem to have enough brain power to make structures very well. So they rely on natural cover a lot. So if you start seeing, 2 or 3 logs down, laying over another, like, a parapet or any kind of a situation where you've got logs over logs or logs over a boulder, and you see lay evidence underneath those more or less rain shelter logs. Sometimes they'll place like a little bit of bark or some moss to like keep the holes from, dropping too much rain on them, but they don't really get into much of a structure. I think they actually potentially might live in might be more habitable to caves. I'm not really sure. I have not tried to track them. I don't really want to, just for my own freaking safety. Hey Blake, what do you mean who? Aloha. How are you doing? Let me grab my glasses. I can't see for crud. Oh, Big Island Beach. So, the things that they will do. They Gugwe are one of the species like the red-bone people, the coral-faced people, sun-faced people. They'll capture you. They'll hold you captive. They'll deny you food. They'll deny you water. They will deny you movement. They will starve you. They will abuse you, and I mean that literally. Not only will they beat you half to death, but they will also molest you. And I don't think it really matters if you're male or female. There are stories of both. So they're incredibly dangerous. And they're very cunning. They'll lure you. They'll, like I said, they'll make mock sounds. They'll mock interactions. They'll try to convince you that they are a friendlier species. They'll use similar knock patterns. I haven't seen any of them, though, write in kanji yet. They keep it more simple. They use kana, very simple forms of laid out stick communications. And they have a tendency to use more trail markers. They don't seem to have the senses to form more complete thoughts. I'm not really sure. I know that the one that was on our ranch could speak, and I know that he was pretty intelligent as far as being able to formulate thoughts that way, and very taunting, very trying to get a rise out of you, to get you to react, to get you to close, get up on him, to give him the advantage to grab you. So they do a lot of luring practices. They also don't warn you away. Most of the friendlier cryptids will shake a bush at you, or they'll chuck a rock at you, or something to say, "Hey, scram! You're too close." They don't do that either. Typically, they'll uh, they'll call your name, they'll whistle at you, um, they'll tap rocks to make you think that they're friendly. Um, they don't seem to use a lot of warning sticks either. They don't do a lot of snap stick. They don't seem to cooperate with each other very well. A lot of them seem to be individuals that I've run across. Typically, they don't seem to live with other of their own species. The only group I've found in this valley that lives with its own species is the one group of Gugwe that I kind of become friendly with. I still don't really trust them, but I was introduced to that group by my mother, and that group doesn't seem to. It seems like they've updated, they've modernized a bit, or maybe they've been put in their place. So they don't. They'll still sneak up on you. Don't get me wrong. And that's where I took the pictures of the defecation in the water, because I know I can get close to them. I've had those things within like 8 feet of me before they start growling and huffing at me. But they don't ever seem to want to grab me. They don't stand up. And the other thing is I've been able to successfully trade with that very small family group. I think there are maybe 3 or 4 individuals. They don't seem to reproduce as quickly either, because they've been a stable population for the last 10 years of a very small amount of individuals in the area. And they do understand the trade system, which is unusual because the other Gugwe that I've run across don't seem to want to trade. They just seem to want to sneak up on you and grab you. So keep that in mind. If you've got something that does not want to trade with you, you're probably dealing with a dogman or a Gugwe, because neither one of them seem to want to trade with us humans. They might trade with other species, but they don't want to deal with us. Hey, Tass, what are your thoughts concerning mind speak that some experience talk about? Well, that would probably be just plain old telepathy. And, if you meditate enough and you practice enough, I mean, we had a whole telepathic war between us and Russia all through the 60s and 70s. Who has the best telepath? So there's some science, I guess, behind that possibility. And I know that my Guanche father was telepathic because that was part of his teaching as a, Deer Society individual. And, the Deer Society individuals are actually more like the Hegopla, where they revere the deer much like the cow. Yeah. So they kind of manage and take care of deer in the wild. They'll adopt deer that are, left orphaned. They'll care for an injured deer. And sometimes they'll even move deer from one location to another. And that's a bizarre thing to notice. But I've seen it happen more than once. And the Oma, too, they also have a tendency to tend to animals that are hurt. Like Jen, when she was on our ranch, we had a flying squirrel, a little male that had fallen out of a tree and he'd injured his leg. And she cared for him for probably 3 weeks while its leg mended. And she'd go to the extent of chewing food for it and feeding it because it was very young when it fell. And I remember she would to call it, and it would fly to her shoulder off the tree as she was trying to strengthen its ability again. And I made the mistake of calling it to me one day, and she told me no, I couldn't do that. It had to go back to the wild, and I couldn't befriend it that way. And that's when I realized, she understood the wild animals needed to remain wild, and she was only nursing it back to health. So that's a very human aspect. But Gugwe, the feeding behavior, for instance, of the Gugwe that I witnessed, it like oh my God, that thing used to grab crawdads and tear them apart while they were alive, and like they hear them squeal, as it were. So its feeding pattern, its behavior was very vicious overall, and I think its thoughts were not uh, as humanistic as ours, not as forgiving or kind. They seem to be very driven like the sun-based people and the red-bone people. They all of those species seem to be very vicious and very intent on causing pain to things, which is very strange. It's almost like they're, a little sociopathic in their behaviors, I guess. Yeah, because only sociopaths like to cause pain. And that creature had a very sociopathic nature to it when you're trying to interact with it. And the peculiar thing is we did have one other person on the mm, ranch that interacted with both Jen and the Gugwe, and it was another little girl, an individual whose family was renting a home from us. And she'd stand by that thing, she'd talk to it. And I remember asking Jen one day, I said, well, why is she being so friendly with that thing? Doesn't she understand how dangerous it is? And Jen replied, well, it's cunning. It's convinced her he's her friend. I said, oh, what does that really mean? And Jen said, well, that means that he will take her out of her own bedroom window when he leaves. He'll convince her that he will provide her a safe place and that they will live together. In actuality, it's a ploy to steal the child to eat them. And that child never realized how close she came to being dinner. Sad. That's another reason why I'm trying to relay my native cultural traditions and lore about these things and trying to give people some understanding of the different species. because there are some that we actually do have to be very concerned about, and it's because of what they act like and what their habits are. Not necessarily that we need to kill them out, but we definitely need to be aware of where they are so they don't come towards us. So there's some sort of either barrier, warning sign, or this is a reason why you shouldn't go here, or these are the behaviors that you might hear. At which point you need to leave. Something. Because as natives, we always knew about these things. We were informed through our stories about them. And, in cases of we get too curious, the elders would take us out and show us where they were at and go, hey, that's what that thing is this is what it does, and don't do this. This is stupid. Stay away from them. They'll fucking eat you. So that's an advantage that we had over the cultures coming here. But the cultures coming here decided that everything was, to be destroyed because they were all potentially like the Gugwe, which is not the case. Uh, I hope this little impromptu has been some benefit to people. And I'm sorry it isn't more detailed, but I don't really want to get too many pictures of them, at least not without some long lens range on my camera, because they are nothing that you want to mess with. And overall, the body type, they're pretty wide compared to even the Oma. Uh, Jen Jen, when it attacked her, she was approximately 9.5 feet tall. She weighed around 953 pounds, if I remember right, roughly. And it was only about 8.5 feet tall. It was about a foot shorter than her, but it was also about a foot, maybe a foot and a half, 18 inches wider in the shoulder than her. And it had thicker hips. So they're built for power, definitely built for power. So, if you got nabbed by one of them, there's probably no chance that you'd be able to do a thing about it. And I know that she had difficulty trying to fight it off because she could never win. She was never strong enough. She had to resort to using, you know, softball sized rocks to try to club it to death with, and that still didn't keep it from attacking her. That just slowed it down. It wasn't until a Guanche male came to her aid, and he was he was 10 feet tall and about the same shoulder width, and it took both of them to take that thing down. They had to join together in order to beat it up, subdue it, break its back, and it took them a while, about 20 minutes, trying to fight with that thing because everybody in our house heard that thing. Oh God, heard that entire fight that night. That was one of the nights my dad was like, I am not going to go investigate. I do not care how many guns we got. I don't care how many lanterns we have, but we are not stepping out the door. And that was one of the times he actually made sure we all had something handy. Because he was a little concerned it might get too close to the house. So, I'm still a little trying to click back through things because that brought some really horrific memories back about that whole affair, as it were. So, I hope you don't mind my rattled nature. This is about as rattled as I ever get, so I hope you don't mind. So anybody have more questions? Because I'd like to answer a few questions if anybody has any. Otherwise, I think I'll just cut it at about 30 minutes, maybe 45 if you've got questions. I just wanted to get the information out so that you understand how they move. Again, they move very close to the ground. The sound pattern stays paced with you, and you really have to leave when they stand up and start parting bushes, because that's a sign they're coming at you. And, just be very mindful that not everything's the same. So at night, Omagwanch and Yaren, Skugum, all that, they'll move around a lot. They'll walk, and you'll hear them pace you. During the day, they'll follow you too, but they're always going to be on 2 feet. They're not going to be crawling along the ground. Every incident that I've either interviewed somebody or I've listened to as people reporting, because I do listen to several shows where people read, where people have had interactions, encounters, etc. And part of the reason why I do that is to figure out the movement patterns. What do they hear? What do they experience? How comparable is that to what I've experienced? They will pace you just like a Bigfoot. They'll stand up and walk, and they'll run alongside of your vehicle. That's bizarre to have happen. And they actually have a funny response to um, a baboon smile. Baboons will furl their eyebrows down and give you a big toothy grin like they're gonna eat you, but that's actually their friendly face. And when you do that at a dog man, they'll go, huh? And kind of, what? Wow. They have like some sort of recognition about what you just did. And I did run that experiment. I let a dog man chase my vehicle on 3 different occasions in this valley. And the third time I made a baboon face, which I'd already checked against the baboon up at OMSI just to make sure that what I had read was not fake, because, researchers don't always get it right. So it checked, and then I experimented with Dogman because I had this curiosity of, is it really a dog? Is it a baboon? And what the heck is this thing? Yeah, it looks like a dog. It has a tail. It has, pointed ears like a shepherd. It runs on its back legs and stands primarily upright. It has front arms. They don't have as wide as shoulders. Their shoulders are more collapsed forward like a dog's shoulders. So I just had to, out of my own curiosity, I had to know if it would react to it. I figured it wouldn't even recognize what I was doing, but it did. And it almost looked like it was whimsical about it. Like, haha, that's funny. Human figured something out. Wow. Which kind of startled me. And that's when he peeled off. He kind of took off down the field away from my vehicle. And he'd already been running alongside of my vehicle for probably 200 yards when I finally, because he was looking down. The vehicle I was in was a Ford Explorer, and he had to stoop down about 2.5, maybe 3 feet to look in the window. So he was probably scraping 10.5 feet in height. He's one of the bigger dogmen I've ever seen in this area, to be honest. Oh, I'm so glad that you like the shorts, Taz. I didn't want to try to rush what I was saying. And I tried to record, a couple of videos, an hour short, and I figured, screw it. I'll just do an impromptu live and just get this information out. Because it is important, especially this time of season. As winter comes in, these things get hungrier and they need more food and they become more explorative of their areas. Because I hadn't, in the spring was the only other time I'd been paced by one in that area. And actually it was further back. It was behind the deer blind. Um, and then out on the peninsula once I'd been paced by something. So it was springtime and fall. I didn't hear anything, didn't see anything, didn't note anything Gugwe like in that area throughout the summer. So I think that's maybe why the bear people in that area have been getting a little more disturbed, and probably potentially why the skakkum uh, a half mile away have also been getting a little more disturbed. Because the evidence over there by the skakkum was also another tent that had been flattened, missing tent poles, and looking like, people had tore out of there like they were leaving stuff behind to leave. So that might not just been a human issue, it might have been a human Gugwe issue. So, yeah, I'm going to be a lot more careful in both of those areas. I'm so glad that spontaneity works. Like I said, I figured it was the easiest way. I only burned 2 gigs to do a live, where, I might burn 3 gigs to put up a 5 minute video that's going to take me 45 to an hour and a half to post. Nah, screw it. I'll just do a live. And in fact, I might utilize this more often because it immediately posts after I'm done, broadcasting. So the material will be available rather quickly comparatively. So don't be surprised if you see more lives. It might be necessary just to throw out hopefully some good information. And again, the reason why I'm giving away this like tracking stuff is because I know there are a lot of people very interested in trying to prove these things and proof that they exist. And a lot of, researchers are boots on the ground. They're going out and they're trying to figure it out. I just don't want them getting into trouble, and because I'm aware of so many of these different things, because I've been around them all my life, I figured the best safety thing I could do and the best informative thing I could do, other than my traditional lore, is to exemplify the things that they do, how they move, where they move, and what they do, what times of year they do it, which ones behave which way and why. It'll give researchers a better clue in many ways, what not to do, and where things are more copacetic and where you might actually get some good results without potentially putting yourself in harm's way. I'm so glad that your guys are happy with my channel, by the way. I was a little concerned that people might just go trollish on me. But that's okay. I used to run an MRIC chat. I know about trolls, and I am very aware of script kitties. They were fun to play with. But anyway, you learn to tolerate this silliness of humanity. Most people don't read more than 6 books once they leave high school, so I keep that in mind. If you are an avid reader or a person with a hobby or an interest, I'm much more interested in talking to you because you've got something going on in your life, and I appreciate that. So, any more questions? Otherwise, I might just ramble and talk about other things, but I really wanted to get that a little bit about the movement pattern of Gugwe out because that's important. It's something that distinguishes them from other cryptids. Like I said, the majority of other cryptids walk upright habitually when they're moving between locations or when they're following you. They don't typically crawl at you. It's usually the more gnarly stuff that crawls at you. I mean, they'll, they'll tree peek at you. They will shake bushes at you. They'll toss stuff at you to get you to move. They might even at you to get you to scram, but they don't typically get violent. Uh, the only ones that seem to get violent are the ones that are more vicious to each other as well. They aren't necessarily the best company all the way around. Trying to think if there's anything else that I remember. The sleeping, the movement, the foraging, the habitual nature of capturing, cruelty. Yeah, no, that covers it. Oh, and I don't necessarily think they use fire either. In the areas I've tracked them, I have never found any indication of them gathering like punk wood or any remnants, coals. No charred or burnt wood. No, I haven't found anything. No, no, I haven't found anything related to them using fire either. So I think if they are an associated species with us, they are probably a far more ancient, very rudimentary critter, both mentally and, well, I won't say physically because they are some powerful. They have some big boys, put it that way. And their hair is slightly longer. Their hair is black and 3-4 inches long. Their overall body coat looks more like a chimpanzee coat. The way chimpanzee has real long hair that kind of is a bit stiff, like horsehair, and kind of sticks away from the body in some places. Like they'll have kind of a bit of a ruff or a bit of a shoulder spike or some elbow spikes. You'll see some spikiness off their knees when they're sitting. But you also see that with Badger Man. Badger Man seems to have a real thick coat, but Badger Man, instead of having a bald head, will typically have a white stripe. Sometimes it'll part and go into two, just like a normal badger, and it'll either be in the front of the head and start parting around the top, or it will immediately split and run, like just like a badger's. And the stripes do carry down their back of their bodies and down into their tails because Badger Man, though he walks upright, actually has a tail like a badger. The eye shine is also very lime green, yellow green, bright, really, really bright, like a badger's. Like they look like little freaking bullseye lamps. And I really need to grab a video of that because I know of a location where a badger man likes to drop down out of a tree and look at me when I go up to say hi. And he does that pretty consistently. So hopefully here soon, before it gets really rainy and nasty, I can go up and try to do that. I think my phone will actually capture that, I hope. And, as time goes on, maybe I can figure out how to get some funding so I can maybe improve my overall equipment. But, I think a phone actually does pretty good for a majority of what I'm trying to exemplify as far as, you know, ground evidence. And, people who are, hunters and or people who actually track probably understand a lot of this very quickly compared to other individuals. And I'm trying to make things as digestible as possible. Uh, and if you got any suggestions to make it even more digestible, please let me know, because I'll adjust anything I can in order to make it more, consumable overall. And I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you guys, but I feel it's kind of necessary because some of the things that Uncle Long talked about, that come about during stressful times on this planet are beginning to occur. And, like the white animal showing up, that was something that both my native grandmother and Uncle Long spoke of. When this planet becomes imbalanced, the white animals, albinistic animals, start showing up, and it's going to be every species. Be anything from a rabbit to a rat to a moose to even an elephant will become albinistic during times like this. And I don't know if either one knew exactly what prompts this sort of factor, other than that they said that in both of their myth cycles, when the animals started to turn white, things would get very unusual on our planet. Like you're living in the Chinese sense of interesting times. One of the incidences that my native grandmother had record of was, the animals turning white about 2,500 years ago, when we natives ended up in a heavy conflict with cryptids. We had become technologically more advanced at that time, and we were quite vicious to each other. We were warring between tribes. We were very much like we are today, very greedy, very sexualized in our nature. And the cryptids didn't like what we were doing, how we were behaving, and how we were acting. And it became known that we were on the shite list, so to speak. And that was when we started, having stories of lots of white animals showing up. And not just white buffalo. It was like everything turned white. Deer turned white. Antelope turned white. Everything turned white. Rabbits, mice, snakes, everything turned white. And then Uncle Ong's stories and my native grandmother's stories of the Ice Age, there was also a lot of concern about white creatures. A lot of them seem to come from the ground, recesses, caves, ravines, places that were cracks down in the ground. And I don't think that's necessarily what's going on with the surface animals, but they said that the surface animals turned white before we started seeing white giants uh, and white cryptids that we didn't know anything about that were, oh, we dang near didn't survive, put it that way. Our population was decreased a lot during that time here in this part of the world. And then, there's also been a few questions about the end of the Dryas period and what caused that, which I'm going to make a video on because there is actually a calcium carbonate layer here from one of the sections of asteroid that kind of powdered itself over this region approximately 12 to 13,000 years ago, which pretty much put an end to the Jurassic period, supposedly. So I will get into some details about that real soon. But yeah, the whole white animal thing has really been kind of chewing on the back of my brain. Uh, Ew, it looks like I just ran. Oh, I'm pushing my phone. Sorry about that pause. So yeah, the whole white animal stories and history has been really pushing on my brain because the other thing that they said is that the lore indicated that the white animals started attacking first. They'd scare you. They would stomp on stuff. They would bowl you over. A lot of them didn't necessarily hurt you, but they definitely seemed to go after specific tools at the time. For instance, that was one of the peculiar things about both of those storylines is that they went out of their way to go after what we had been utilizing technologically wise, which kind of, you know, confuses me a bit. That I don't know if that's something spiritual or if that's an unfamiliarity. Maybe the animals don't like the sounds of certain things, or maybe they didn't recognize them as proper objects. I don't know. The stories around those white animals were very peculiar, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to, you know, tell them to you and not sound like a idiot. Because some of the things that were said was very weird about that time. A lot of it was more or less us really scrambling to survive and some very peculiar things occurring that just logically don't make sense. It's kind of hard uh, to visualize in order to talk about. It actually took me a while to assimilate the stories as it were, as it was. Like Gugwe, yeah, like Gugwe. And actually, I talked a little bit to Dr. Bender-Nagel about Gugwe as a potential 411 issue guy. And the reason is because up in the Puget Sound between, I think it was about 2008 and about 2014, uh, people's feet started washing up on the shore in shoes. And they all had sneakers on, tennis shoes. Now, I was given access to a few of the photos, about 16 feet to be exact. The peculiar thing about the feet and the shoes is two leg, two lower leg bones were all broken, roughly 3 to 4 inches above the ankle, like they had been twisted off, popped. And the official account is that a bunch of people capsized the boat, and their feet somehow washed up in tennis shoes. One, you don't wear tennis shoes on a boat. You wear deck shoes or you slide the heck off the dang surface. So that story is obviously stupid. The other thing is there was a particular river where joggers were constantly going missing, consistently with the wash up of the feet. The other peculiar thing is that particular river, its flow pattern out into the bay goes straight out across the Puget, hits Gig Harbor area, and circles right back in on the Sound on the opposite side, which is where all the feet have been found. So that's a current issue. And the boat that supposedly capsized is not within that current zone. So again, that seems to be more of a cover story. So Bender, Nagel, and I spoke about what could possibly be doing that to individuals. And I said, well, whatever it is habitually stalks, you know. And the other is, whatever it is habitually after humans. Mind you, there were never any bodies found of like the approximate 27 people's feet that washed up, which is also 10 more individuals than supposedly the 16 on the, well, 11 more individuals than the 16 supposedly on the boat. So things just don't match up there. And the sightings of what had been noted by joggers that got away from it described a large, very wide individual with a bald head. So again, that kind of throws it in the category of Gugwe and not some of the other potential cryptids. Exactly, Biggie. Keeping it real. You got to be 100% with the truth. And that's actually another reason why I use the term Sabe instead of Bigfoot or cryptid. Because Sabe actually has the implication of you have to be honest. And that's something that the more friendly species definitely go by. They are very honest people, and they do not appreciate creatures that lie in any way, shape, or form. Those that trick you are typically enemies of them, and they will put them in their place. Uh, you know, Guanch definitely don't like Gugwe, and they will take advantage of the circumstances if they can to make them mind their manners, which is what I think has happened with the one group I can get close to, because they do seem to mind their manners. Oh, yep, there's my data warning. Awesome! I am so glad I finally learned the origin of that word, Ojibwe. Awesome. Cool. So you already understand you have to go into the woods with a pure heart and an honest mind, or you don't come back out. That's why. Because if you have the nature of a liar, you will associate with something that lies to you, and then you're pretty much screwed. So with my data warning going off, I think I will have to cut it in an hour before this phone collapses and falls over and becomes a brick. And I'm going to have to, offload some more stuff so I can make some more videos. So thank you for the impromptu joining of the channel. I really appreciate you guys. I'm glad that you are liking my content. And if they're, like I said, I've got very specific information about a very select few groups of, species. But if there are more details that you are interested in, and if I can provide them, I will definitely do that. So please ask questions. And my email is Northwest Native Tracker, all lower cases, at yahoo.com. And I do answer them not necessarily every day, but at least once or twice a week. I try to get into the account and make sure I catch up on stuff. And I try to do a good job at replying. Upstate New York, Sabe. Hey, Deborah. Thank you for all you share with us. You're welcome. No problem. Like I said, I'd rather that people are informed. I don't like secrets. It's stupid. Secrets lead to more secrets, and eventually you'll collapse your society under a bunch of secrets and lies about secrets. So no, I'm not into that. Hey, thank you, Deborah. Happy rising. Before my phone falls over, have a good morning, and I'm gonna do a live on Friday. And then in 2 weeks, my schedule changes again. I'm thinking maybe of doing a Sunday show because it looks like I'm going to have, instead of Friday, Saturday off, I'll have a weekend off. So I should be able to do probably a Sunday show. That way I can kind of wrap up information from, you know, research on Saturday. I am going to try to go out this Saturday because it looks like it's going to be clear weather and follow that little round hole to see if it goes down into what I think it might go into, which is probably a feeding area. I did find some, unusual fish catch in that area, but other than the duck entrails, there was just that pass-through hole, which looks a lot like what Jen Jen would leave behind. So I'm hoping there'll be something good down that little trail, and I can give you some more info. And it's all on me being able to find this stuff and then posting about it, because I don't hold a reserve of tracking evidence. I just go out and do it because, well, I've done it all my life, so it's no biggie for me. On Dongkla, here was born. Next time all. Hey, so you probably know the word for dog who laughs like monkey. Shonka uk. Oh, I'll have to check my email again. Thank you, Deborah. I'll be able to do that tomorrow. I'll make sure I look. I've been having some problems, so I just found an email that was from like a week and a half ago and hadn't showed up in my in my box until today. So something peculiar is happening with my email. Hopefully, I get it. Uh, so I'll let you know, and I will send you an email back if I get it. All right, everyone. Have a good morning, and take care, and thank you for joining me. I appreciate you all. Hang tough. We'll make it through. We'll get some information through to each other, me and maybe we can get some common sense through to other people. Wow, you were born in Waterloo? That's a heck of a place. That's got a lot of history, and some of it's very interesting. Oh, wow. Anyway, good morning.